What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. And today we're getting into my February 13th of the edition of the Bracketology. Another wild weekend of college basketball. But let's get into this Bracketology here. That is going to start out with the Bracket Watch, as always. Top of our seed remains Purdue. No surprises there. Continuing to just set themselves apart of the entire Big Ten conference at this point. And then we have the first team out, Wake Forest, who did lose last night. I believe it was against Duke, or I'm not entirely sure who Duke played last night, but I think it was Wake Forest. But Wake Forest, unfortunately, couldn't get that one. And then the last team in is Utah, right there, who took a tough loss to Washington State over the weekend. If you look at the bubble, though, last four byes, we do have Butler, the Bulldogs, right there. Then we have Boise State, TCU, and then Nebraska. Last four in, we have New Mexico, Ole Miss, Nevada, and then Utah. First four out, we do have Wake Forest, and then Gonzaga back up here, beating Kentucky this week. They are now into the first four out range right there. Then we have Seton Hall, and then Cincinnati. And then the next four out, we do have St. John's, Colorado, Providence, and Villanova. Okay, if we look at this full bracket, though, here, with the movement, we do have New Mexico and Ole Miss dropping to 11 seeds. We have Southern New to the Field as a 16, and Eastern Kentucky dropping down to a 16. And then we have Nevada New to the Field as an 11, and Utah falling to an 11. In the Midwest region, we do have Purdue as the number one overall seed right there. Florida jumping up to an 8 seed. They got a big win. Forgot who it was against, but they got a win. Washington State, as I mentioned, beating Utah, climbing to the 9 seed. We do have San Diego State jumping up to the 5 seed. Florida Atlantic falling to a 6 seed. We have Iowa State dropping down to the 3 seed, as well as Iowa State jumping up to the 3 seed, and Eastern Washington jumping up to the 14 seed. And then we got to mention Tennessee losing to Texas A&M. First loss for Tennessee in a while for that program. In the East region, we do have UConn still as that number one seed right there, continuing. Also very similar to Purdue. I think these are the two clear top teams in the country right now that just continue to dominate in their conferences. And then we have South Dakota State, new to the field, that's a 16. Michigan State going to be falling to a 9. I believe they did beat Illinois, though, either way, so that's interesting. And then we have Yale new to the field as a 12 seed, and then Boise State falling to that 10 seed right there. In the South region, we do have Houston as that number one seed. Sam Houston State new to the field as a 16. We have Richmond new to the field as a 12. Duke jumping up to the 3 seed, and then TCU falling to the 10. In the West region, Arizona, that number one seed right there. I believe they had a close game against, I want to say, it was Colorado. Actually, they beat Colorado pretty good. So that's a big win to boost their resume. This number one seed, I think Houston's pretty safe at this point in time as the third. The fourth one seed, though, pretty much open at this point. I think it's battling between like Tennessee and North Carolina and Arizona at this time for that number one overall, or that number one seed in the West. And then we have Texas falling to the 8 seed. Mississippi State going to be jumping to the 9 seed. We do have Wisconsin losing again. I forgot who was against, but Wisconsin, man, they're struggling in the Big Ten the past few weeks. So they're falling to a 4 seed. Then we have UC Irvine dropping down to the 13 seed. Clemson going to be jumping up to the 6 seed. Then we have Colorado State falling to the 7 seed. And then I just had to talk about Kansas. What a crazy game it was against Baylor that they just barely pulled off. Almost had Baylor have a chance to win that one or tie it. But they got a little bit lucky on that. But then last night against Texas Tech, they get shellacked. It's just a weird Kansas team at this point that I don't know what to do with them. But yeah, they're there at that 2 seed, and then Green Bay jumping up to the 15. All right, but let's get into the bracket here. Starting out with the first four, we do have Nevada versus Utah. I am going to have to go with the Utah Utes in that game. As much as that pains me from a BYU fan, I do think they would pull that one off. Then I do think NC Central. Oh, whoops. I did not change this, did I? Okay, so it's Southern Eastern Kentucky. Let's just put that one over here. My bad, guys. Southern Eastern Kentucky. Okay. No. Okay. NC Central, I do think would beat Merrimack, though. And then New Mexico, Ole Miss, I am going to go with New Mexico in that game. And finishing it up, Southern Eastern Kentucky, I will go with Eastern Kentucky. So, for a spot in the round of 32, we do have Purdue, Eastern Kentucky. Give me Purdue in that game. Washington State, Florida, that's a good matchup. I think I'm going to lean towards the 8-seeded Florida Gators, but that's a tough one as well. And I also was debating going with McNeese State. I just think that San Diego State is too good. They're tournament ready. I think they would be able to beat them. But that's a tight one. And then Dayton, I think, would be Akron. Then I'm going to go with an upset pick here. I'm going to go with New Mexico to beat Florida Atlantic. You know, New Mexico coming off the first 4 games, that does give them a good advantage. So I think they can take advantage of that. Florida Atlantic is a team that is very high-powered, can really score with anybody, shoot with anybody in the country. But I do think, man, this team is prone for an upset, especially with the New Mexico team, who, if they're in the first 4 coming off that game already, it's going to be tough for, New Mexico's already has the game under their belt. Florida Atlantic's coming in a little bit rusty. But, yeah, I do think that New Mexico would be able to get that one. And then Iowa State, I do think would be Eastern Washington. Utah State, Butler, a 10 versus a 7 seed. That one's tough. I think I'm going to lean towards the 7-seeded Utah State team in that one. And then Tennessee, I do think would beat Troy. Okay, Arizona, NC Central. I am going to go with Arizona. Texas, Mississippi State. I do think I'm going to go with the 8-seeded Texas. BYU, I think, would beat Samford. Then I'm going to go with UC Irvine to beat Wisconsin. I think that would be a popular one. UC Irvine, good 13 seed. I think that's I think that would be the best 13 seed. Wisconsin, I think, is just just a weird team right now. Not playing great. I do believe in that team as a whole, but at this point in time, man, this team's not getting the job done. So I think I would go with the upset there with UC Irvine in that game. And then I do go with Clemson here to beat Utah. And Alabama Morehead State, a 3 versus a 14 seed. I kind of want to go with a little bit of fun there, but I am going to go with Alabama. I will say this about Alabama. This is a very high-powered team, very similar to a team like Florida Atlantic. I think they're a little bit better version of that in the SEC, though. But anyway, this is a very good team. But they don't have the best effort on the defensive end of the ball. We saw that against LSU on Saturday. I think this team, a Morehead State team, if this team plays hard and gets some shots to fall, I think a lot of teams can hang in there with Alabama and potentially pull off an upset. So watch out for Alabama as an upset team in this tournament, but I am going to move them on past Morehead State. And then I do go with Nebraska to pull off the win over Colorado State right there. And then Kansas, I think, would beat Green Bay. Okay. UConn, I do think, would handle business against South Dakota State. Virginia, Michigan State. I'm going to go with Michigan State, but that's 2 good programs right there. That's going to be a tough one. I am going to go with South Carolina to beat Yale in that game. Baylor, I think, would handle business against South Florida. Then I'm going to go with an 11/6. No disrespect to a good Oklahoma team, but I'm just a big-time believer in Indiana State. I don't see many 6 seeds in this tournament beating them. I do think they would be able to get the win over Oklahoma. And then Auburn, I do think would handle business against Vermont. Texas Tech, Boise State, a 10 versus a 7 seed. I am going to go with the 7 seed at Texas Tech, the way they played last night, and then finishing it off with North Carolina beating Colgate. Okay, Sam Houston State. I am going to go with Houston. St. Mary's Northwestern, an 8 versus a 9. I am going to go with the 8-seeded St. Mary's, just barely. Then I'm going to go with the 12 over 5. Richmond beating Creighton. Not a believer in Creighton at this point. I think they need to figure things out. I'm a believer in, well, I think Richmond's probably the weakest of the 12 seeds here, but I think against Creighton, I'm going to go with Richmond in a decent A10 conference. So give me Richmond to pull off the win. And then Illinois, do you think would beat UNC Wilmington? Kentucky Grand Canyon. I'm going to go with another 11 over 6. That's my third one. Beating Kentucky. Kentucky is another team that's just sliding at this point in the season. John Calipari's got to figure out what is going on, because if they play a team like Grand Canyon, who's a good 11 seed, they're going to lose that one. So that's why I'm going to go with Grand Canyon in the upset. And then Duke versus High Point, I am going to go with Duke. Texas A&M TCU. Texas A&M beat one of the best teams in the country. I am going to go with Texas A&M, but that's a good 7 versus a 10. And then Marquette, I think, would beat Quinnipiac. All right, Purdue, Florida, 1 versus an 8 seed. Do have to go with Purdue in that one. San Diego State, Dayton, a 5 versus a 4 seed. I believe this was the same matchup we had last time. I am going to stick with it and go with San Diego State, just like the last time. Too good of a team right there. And then New Mexico, Iowa State, 11 versus a 3 seed. I am going to go with Iowa State in that game. And then Tennessee, I do think would handle business against Utah State. All right, Arizona, Texas, a 1 versus an 8 seed. Give me Arizona. BYU, I think, would handle business against the 13 UC Irvine. Clemson, Alabama. This would be a massive football matchup, as we know from the past, but this is basketball. I am still going to go with Nate Oates' squad. I still believe in this team. I think they can really play well, man. This team is red hot going into the tournament. So I am going to go with Alabama. But then I'm going to go with the 10 over 2. I'm going to go with Nebraska, a team that's playing well in the Big Ten. And I'm just saying, man, Kansas, it's just a day-to-day team, man. I don't know what to expect from them come tournament time. I honestly think with that, I just feel a little bit more confident pulling off an upset. So give me Nebraska in the win. And then UConn, Michigan State, a 1 versus an 8 seed. I do have to go with UConn in that game. South Carolina, Baylor is a very good matchup. I think I'm going to go with the 5-seeded South Carolina team. So that means all 3 5 seeds so far have moved on in the round of 32. Now Creighton is eliminated, but you get my picture. Auburn, Indiana State. As much as I want to go with Indiana State, I do have to go with Auburn out of the SEC to win that one. And then North Carolina, I think, would be able to beat Texas Tech. Okay, Houston, St. Mary's. I am going to go with Houston in that game. Richmond, Illinois. I'm going to go with Illinois. Duke, Grand Canyon, 11 versus a 3. I'm going to go with Duke. I want to go with Grand Canyon, but I just can't see that one happening. And then Marquette, Texas A&M. I do think I'm going to give some love this time to Marquette and have them move on. But Texas A&M, they just beat a very good team in Tennessee, so I could very much see that happening. But I am going to go with Marquette. So all chalk in that region. But for a spot in the Sweet 16, we do have Purdue handling business against San Diego State. And then we have Iowa State versus Tennessee. I do still am a believer in Tennessee, so I'm going to go with the top 2 seeds there. Moving on. Arizona, BYU, a 1 versus a 5 seed. I am going to go with Arizona the way they've been playing. So another 1 seed advances on. And then Alabama, Nebraska, 3 versus a 10 seed. Let's do it. Let's go with the 10 seed in Nebraska team, the only double-digit seed remaining there. Nebraska, very good team. And as I mentioned, Alabama could be a team that could lose earlier on in the tournament. I do think with a Nebraska team coming up against them, they could get upset. So give me Nebraska to beat Alabama and Nate Oates' squad. Moving on, we have UConn beating South Carolina. You know what? Actually, let's flip this one up this time. I've been giving South. There's been 2 matchups in a row with these bracketologies where I've gave this one to UConn. I am still a firm believer in South Carolina. These 2 are some of my favorite teams come the tournament time. Let's flip this one up. Let's go with South Carolina to beat UConn and move on to the Elite Eight, where they will meet Auburn or North Carolina. I think I'm going to go with the 3-seeded Auburn team. A battle of 2 SEC teams there in the Elite Eight with Auburn advancing on. And then finishing it off here, Houston, Illinois. I am going to go with Houston to pull off that one. And then Duke, Marquette. I'm going to go with the 3-seeded Blue Devils. So, for a spot in the Final Four, Purdue, Tennessee. 1 versus a 2 seed. After Tennessee's loss, I gotta go with Purdue to get the revenge from last time. Give me Purdue to move on. Arizona, Nebraska, 1 versus a 10 seed. I'm going to be honest. This would probably be the most Arizona loss in the tournament. They always seem to lose to some of these teams over their history. But I am going to go with Arizona as another 1 seed to advance on to the Final Four. And then in this side, South Carolina, Auburn, 5 versus a 3 seed. I am going to bring the Gamecocks of South Carolina to continue to advance here, playing red-hot basketball. Moving on, Houston, Duke, a 1 versus a 3 seed. Give me Duke, the 3-seeded team who have kind of been a hater on the past few times, but they did have a good past weekend, so I am going to give them some respect. Give me Duke. All right. So we do have 2 number 1 seeds in Purdue, Arizona, a 3 seed in Duke, and a 5 seed in South Carolina. So Purdue, Arizona, 1 versus a 1. I am going to go with Purdue, the number 1 overall seed, to beat Arizona. And then South Carolina, Duke, 5 versus a 3. I'm going to go with the Gamecocks of South Carolina advancing on past the Blue Devils. So that leaves Purdue, 1 seed, 5 seed South Carolina. National championship, I think, goes to Zach Edey and Purdue in this bracketology. Give me the Boilermakers to win it all. All right. Anyway, guys, thank you all for watching this video today. Hopefully, y'all enjoyed the content. Comment down below your predictions. Anyway, guys, peace out.